Do you have a newborn baby at home? Sometimes can be hard to know what to do with the newborn baby when they're actually awake. First off, that can be rare. And the first things we're really focusing on with babies, of course, is learning to eat and sleep and get the digestion moving. So, really, at the beginning, I look at the number one goal in the first 2 to 3 months is to build trust. Build trust by being responsive and by meeting our baby's needs, by getting to know them, and even building trust with ourselves that it's okay to be wherever we are. That our goal is to love our baby, take care of our baby, but that it's okay to be a first-time parent. If you're a first-time parent, it's okay to be a first-time parent. Let's embrace being first-time parents. But also, it's awesome to ask for help and get support because there are tons of strategies that we can use that can make life better. So a few things to think about infant play and newborn play. Like I say, number one goal is to build trust. Number two goal, potentially number two goal would be tummy time. And why do we need tummy time? Well, if you think about it, okay, Tigger here is going to be my baby. And if you think about it, the Back to Sleep campaign for safe sleep tells us that babies are the safest to sleep when they are alone, on their backs, in a crib. ABC. But, so they're on their backs in a crib. They're on their backs when they're in a car seat. And they're generally on their backs a lot. And so what can happen is that then their muscles can get uneven because they're used to pulling up against gravity this way. And they need practice to pull up the opposite side muscles. And so, but the nice thing is that a lot of tummy time in the early days is just being on us in a position that goes against gravity. So anytime that the baby is pushing against gravity and using the back muscles, they're doing tummy time. If they're on our chest, and especially this is good when dad can do it or partner can do it, because with mom it can be challenging because there's milk right there, so we clearly want to have some. But whoever does it, anytime that the baby gets practice at lifting their head and pushing up against gravity on their tummies, that's going to help them to prepare for crawling. Another great thing preparing for crawling that I learned even this week, again, we are always learning. I've been working with kids and families for over 14 years, and there's still things that I'm learning, which is awesome. One of the things that I learned this week or last week was that when we're doing diaper changes, if we can roll the baby to the side, put the diaper underneath, roll baby around, and wipe the bottom this way. Well, clearly for little girls, we want to only go this way. But the point being that if we roll the baby, then we're also giving them the idea of rolling. And that is also awesome for their development. Again, though, we're here to talk about play. So we want to look at when is a good time to play. If our number one goal is to be responsive and to build trust and to teach the baby that he or she is lovable and safe, that the world is a safe place and that they are lovable, then we want to choose times for play that are appropriate, right? So we want to choose times when the baby has already eaten, is not hungry, and is not tired. And with little babies, that can be a real challenge because the wake window for a newborn baby, generally speaking, is that they're probably going to be tired about 45 minutes to an hour after they last woke up. And that includes time for feeding. So in the early days, there's not going to be a whole lot of time when they're in that quiet alert. We call that state the quiet alert state. And that's the state that when all of us are most available for learning. It's not, for example, even with tantrums with a toddler, we want to teach before the tantrum, and after the tantrum. But teaching in the middle of the tantrum is not generally going to be effective because our brains are not really in gear when we're in the middle of a tantrum. Anyway, side note. So quiet alert, the point is that quiet alert is a beautiful time to focus on playing. And so what are some ways that we can do that? One thing to think about with a newborn, of course, we know that newborn vision is about right when it's about arm distance. With a brand new baby, they're going to be able to see us the best at about this far away, when in our arms, basically. And so what can we do? We can think about things like imitation, cause and effect, and making sounds, which also, there are all three of those are kind of interrelated. And here's some different ways that we can play that engage all those three things. So imitation could be that we just stick out our tongues over and over and give lots of repetition and then watch for the little attempts that the baby's probably going to do at watching us. So if you think about it, a baby's timeline is way slower than ours. If you think about what time was like when you were a young child, if you think about like the summer, I remember summers as feeling like they just stretched out forever. And then as we get older, time generally goes faster, and a summer feels like it just was yesterday that it started. But the summer's already pretty much over. Well, it is over at this point. We're in October. So if we think about the way that an adult views time versus the way a baby views time, it can be really helpful to think about that when we're playing with our baby, because they're going to need a lot more repetition. Everything is new for them, and they're just going to need a lot of patience, and we're going to need to really think about slowing down, and some might say ruthlessly eliminate hurry. So lots and lots of repetition. There's some great YouTube videos of people sticking out their tongues at babies. And it's just really, and I can post them if that's helpful. But that is really useful even to watch other people to see how long they did it before the baby imitated them. But just really taking our time. And providing lots of repetition. Because one of my theories is that the reason that time speeds up as we get older is that we know what to expect. And since babies, everything is new for them, my theory is that time goes slower and they're really super in the moment and super watching what we're doing. So one thing is something like sticking out our tongue. Another thing would even be like just simple face movements, or even and doing them really repetitively, slowly, and then when the baby starts to imitate us, we like make a big deal about it. Like, that's awesome, and praise them, because even if the baby doesn't know our words yet, they sure know when we're excited. So really being, oh, look at you're doing it. Great job. Look at you're copying me. And then do it again. So one thing would be different facial movements. Another thing is that even just imitating the baby's movements, and it doesn't have to be the face. So for example, if you notice, if your baby's playing and they're moving their fingers in a certain way, And if you can imitate your fingers in a certain way, in the way that they're doing it, or their shoulders, if they're shrugging their shoulders, if they're like moving their arms around. And of course, when a baby is a newborn, they don't have a whole lot of control yet with their arms. And so it'll take some practice. But the more we copy them, whatever it is, we just pick a body part and do what that body part is doing on your baby and then copy them, because that's both, in a sense, that's both imitation and it's cause and effect. So that's really accomplishing multiple goals with one thing. Cause and effect, also another thing for cause and effect. So the idea of cause and effect is the idea of being an experimenter, being a scientist and experimenting with different, what happens if I do this? And one of your baby's big jobs as a baby is to be an experimenter. And the truth is, I say this all the time with my families, is that as parents, we're experimenters too. We're getting to know our babies and we're copying them. We're getting to know them. We're experimenting to see what works. So even when I come in to work with families, I come in with a whole toolbox full of ideas and tools and tips and tricks that we can try. And then we're experimenting with each individual baby to see which tips and tricks work the best for that baby. So it's a combination of having a toolbox, but then experimenting with which tools work the best with any particular baby at any particular time. Another way to do cause and effect then, so if cause and effect, the idea is that we're giving the baby opportunities to experiment with how things might work. Like, if I do this, then this happens. So while we're watching the baby and very carefully supervising the baby, this is not something we ever want to leave our babies alone doing. But we can take a ribbon, or even, it makes me think about teething. I've got a teething necklace right here, and it kind of makes me think about a teething necklace, because with the teething necklace, what's so awesome about it is that when it gets tugged, then it comes open, so it seems potentially a little bit safer. But what you can do is, if you have a baby gym, or even the car seat handle, when you're watching, if your baby's in the car seat, for example, you can take like even a measuring cup from the kitchen, because often measuring cups will have like holes in the handles that you can put things in. I don't know, for example, depending on the measuring cup, maybe a teething necklace clasp would go through the little hole. But if we can put things on, or like, also you can get bells that have little Velcro bells that like clasp onto a baby's arm or leg, or even like little rattles, like little mittens that go on their hands to keep them. Usually we use them to keep them from scratching themselves when their nails get too sharp. But if you get one of those mittens that has like a little sound, the rattle sound in it, then they're learning that, oh, when I shake my leg, it moves. So if we take the measuring cup, or a whisk, or something from the kitchen, or a toy, or even one of the baby's rattles, and we take, whether it's a teething necklace or a gentle, soft ribbon, and we attach it to their foot, and then we attach the other side to the top, like I say, the handle of the car seat, or something that hangs above the top of the play mat. And while we're watching them, carefully supervised, they can practice making that thing move. So we're giving them the opportunity to figure out, oh, if I move my leg, then the measuring cup moves, or the whisk moves. The rattle makes a sound. And you can do that with arms, you can do that with legs, and something that we can do when we're supervising them, making sure that they're safe, but it's a way that they can learn, if I do this, this is what happens. Like I say, it's similar to when we imitate their different body parts, when we imitate their hands, they're also learning both imitation and if I move my hand that way, my parent also moves their hand the same way. Whoa, I can have an impact on the world. It's so cool. Okay, so we talked about imitation and cause and effect. The last one I'm going to talk about today is sounds, especially silly sounds. So one way would be like reading rhyming books. I mean, California First Five has their whole promotional series about talk, read, and sing. Well, why? Because we can all talk, read, and sing, and those are awesome things to do during playtime. One of the ways we can talk is either reading rhyming books or even pick, for example, you can pick a letter of the week. I would suggest probably a week because that's plenty of time and loads of repetition. You could do it a letter of the day, but I would suggest probably a letter of the week at first. And starting with, I would start personally with vowels. So, and then you could sing anything in that vowel. So if the letter of the week today is ah, or the sound of the week is ah, you know, there's Susie Dorn does a song in Spanish that goes ah 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 árbol, elefante. You can take that concept and make it even simpler and just sing anything you want to with ah 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 ah, and just make ah 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 ah. So that, again, it's that same concept that it's imitation. And then, of course, if the baby, like, imitates you back, and they may not be, again, the imitation is going to get closer and closer to what you did over time. But when we stick our tongue out at the baby at first, the baby's just, you know, you're going to just barely see their tongue move. And it will be like, are they really imitating? Not quite sure. But with some practice, it's going to look more and more like what we're doing, and especially with lots of repetition. One of my many favorite quotes is that the critical link between play and learning, the reason we repeat something and learn from it, is pleasure, which is from Stam and Spencer's book, Right from the Start. But the idea there, of course, is that when we're having fun, we want to do it again. And when we repeat things, the pathways in our brain get stronger, and we learn by repetition. And the fun that makes the repetition makes us want to do it again and get the repetition we need to learn things, which I think is one reason why, like, toddler shows have so many reruns. Theory. I've heard rumors about that. So those are our strategies today. We're looking at early goals in the first few months are building trust, lots of repetition, tummy time to help build the strength in the back so that they're not, because if they're only pulling up this direction all day long, these muscles are going to be weak and out of balance, and it'll be harder for them, and they'll be fussier when it's time to crawl, and they'll be fussier and not want to be on their tummies, and that's no fun. So as much as we can give them practice when they're awake and when we're watching them so that they're safe. And often it can be done here on us, however flat we want to be, but pushing up against gravity going this way. Then we talked about imitation, imitating facial movements, imitating body movements, cause and effect, for example, attaching a rattle or attaching something over their head with a ribbon while we're watching them to their hands or their feet to see what happens. When I do this, I do that, is cause and effect. And then number 3 was cause and effect, imitation, and sounds. So reading sounds, singing sounds, a sound of the week, probably starting with vowels, or even the sounds that are at our lips or in our throat, like g, g, m, n, n. If you think about the first early words are often d, d for dad, and m for mom. And g, g is another like pretty relatively early one. So those are. Anybody have any questions while we're on today? But I'm so grateful that you're here. I hope that you enjoyed and learned something. Feel free to ask me any questions you have, and we can do a future birth bits about it, or respond depending on what the question is. We could respond to a different way, but always looking for good stuff if there are things specifically that you are interested in. Thank you so much for joining today, and I look forward to chatting next week. See you.